Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode where one human being in an unknown world talks about what it's like being in it. I wanted to speak about, first of all, this beautiful title entered my mind: Young Souls Learning from Ancient Worlds. And even a more beautiful title could be Ancient Worlds Learning from Young Souls. But in the subtitle, I've written Learning from Your Moment, from how your moment is being. So, I'll begin by sharing an incredible quote from the great Alan Watts. And Alan Watts says, "Imagine going to sleep and never waking up." And then he says, "Imagine waking up having never gone to sleep." And that is the state where humanity is headed for: the sleepless awakening. In my observations of reality, I have wondered about the nature of intelligent expression. The way I approached it, even in earlier talks, was that I was looking at how intelligence was thrown. You see, we are taught in this world that there are forces. But if we you see, it's kind of like, imagine existence to be a swimming pool, and imagine that souls that are entering it are divers, for example. And somebody would be like, "Mr. Within, what is the soul? What are you talking about?" What you find, we're not physical. What sort of educational system would there be? You know, it would be an educational system acquainting the individual. You know, recently I attained an observation. I cultivated understanding, you know. And you know what this understanding was? I realized that because we're physical creatures, we are reacting to a physical world because we think we're physical creatures. But what if this whole time there has been another dimension where we have been processing information and living life through? You know, I have this other world the whole time. People in our old age, aside from advancement, there's no other purpose for you. Human intelligence is here so that it can learn to accept its moment of being and realize that by the nature of its being, it is enough. You see, the way the world seems to be designed, it's designed with you being in an incomplete position, and your whole life you attempt to complete. So you start off feeling like an incomplete child, you live in this world, you interact, and then you try to, at the end of your life, feel complete. But the hilarious thing is, life is this weird. I mean, of course, it's a little weird. You know, it's like, what is life doing if it was intelligent? It's like showing us, like, just take this in, dear viewers. You know, imagine an inventor created an android that after 100 years, the android would just like stop existing. Okay. Now imagine this inventor who's building this android is smart enough to separate the body of the android with the mind of the android, meaning that it doesn't matter what body the android has, its mind stays independent to its body. So what that means is that the saved data doesn't get lost. To me, this might be one of the most bizarre things I've ever said, but the soul is like a memory card. It's the memory card of a console. And poetically, there's stories of souls who, like, the last time the soul incarnated on earth was like thousands of years ago as like Rishi Vyasa, and then the being didn't incarnate, and then thousands of years passed, and when a similar archaic revival of a frequency was established, the being appeared again. Right? As a podcaster, right? You see, it's your acquaintance, it's your familiarity with the type of reality you have been in before. If you see a human being that is violent, the human being has been exposed to violence. If you see a human being that is kind, the human being has been exposed to kindness. If you want to realize the nature of something, usually the only thing we can truly understand its nature is ourself, and the way we go about understanding it is when we don't put an effort, we see what we are. Okay? I'll give you an example. For example, me personally, when I'm sitting alone, in my own private space, sitting, giving a talk, like, it's very comforting, it's very easy, very smooth. But when there's others in the room, right, then the context of my speech shifts, because there's other minds in the realm, in the vicinity, living minds that can be interacted with. But this view that a young soul is learning from ancient worlds. The ancients point to this. For me personally, I don't know why I don't vibe with it, but, many people consider an evolution of soul. They're considering a different type of evolution going on, not a physical evolution. Wondering, wait a minute, it's recreating every world it steps into. You see, what is the responsibility of the soul? Is the soul responsible for the body? Or is the soul responsible for the space? Or is the objective and subjective dimensions just left for the soul? You see, dear viewer, there will come a time in this life where you will be like, what if I am not my name? What if I am not my personality? What if I am not what I have been taught to be? What if what I am is a momentary choice? What if it's the elegance of how the cosmos is just present? I remember I heard, this very, excellent speaker, Christopher Hitchens. And Christopher Hitchens, on this TV thing, on this news, I don't know what it was this video. On the video, there's this theist debate. This made me think about trying to counter my own And when it came to this view of like countering my own perception, I have this view where I've sat down, looked at this world numerous times, and I'm like, okay, what do I do with this? What do I do with this sight? And I have concluded, just it's a decision I've made. To be honest, it's a decision that's fueling my conscious existence here. In ancient times, certain souls needed certain reasons to stay in the world. If those reasons were not there, they would find it unnecessary and they would leave itself. I thought about, what if I fail? What if the species, doesn't advance? And then I thought about, it would just be a reset. It would be as if we think we are new beings. We think our consciousness is new. We don't realize the way this world is designed. If I think this world is, if I treat for the outer realms to become like machines, my parents would buy a computer, buy a TV, I was the only one who would just open the box and set it up. I loved opening up devices and stuff like that. It's just this feeling that humanity has what it takes to go to the next level now. And we're all standing, idling, thinking that we're all living. Your happiness becomes experience rather than objects. When you're younger, you want objects. When you're older, I think you want acknowledgement. I think that's what really happens. There was no Mr. Within in my time. There wasn't anyone. But that's the blessing. What we don't have, we need, and then we create and we become. That's the nature of this world. We are here to... Oh, humanity, you will fear yourself until you realize there has never been anything to fear. The nature of reality is that it goes forth. You could have dreams, desires, expectations. It goes forth. You know why? You know why beings, it's suggested in, yogic and Buddhic texts, why the being reincarnates. Why then, if this world looping, because we think we are in a world. In years just to notice our suffering. What is this? And I'll tell you, this being alive on earth is poetically like training of learning to see if you have what it takes to be a world. So we are in a world because we are beings that are irresponsible of being the world. If you look at heroes, if you look at the archetypes of greatness, our thing, right? Because live streaming reality. And when you have faith in the inconceivable, you begin to understand that poetically, just like that picture on the Sistine Chapel called The Creation of Adam, the cosmos, or let me just be playful for the New Age community, the greater dimensions are waiting. They're waiting. They're waiting to see which beings can be space. Can you be a being so free that it didn't matter what was in your moment? It didn't matter if it was a self. It didn't matter if it was a world. It didn't matter if it was heaven. It didn't matter if it was hell. It didn't matter if it was a simulation. It didn't matter if it was true. What mattered was that something was happening. I have double-sided doors open, and I'm just waiting.
our species. We have lived already as individuals. Our ancestors experienced the privilege of their individualism. Now we have reached a point where it's not about everybody loving each other, because that's impossible and artificial. But it's about people just questioning, wondering what is the most important value in a world. Forget what is the most important thing in society, in a civilization, but what is space for beauty is impossible. Inefficiently, until something so the advanced humanity will know that there are other rooms in the house that it thought was only one room. We will not fear other extraterrestrial beings because we as a species logically do not fear our own greatness. That means, imagine, you in the future, humanity is going to be like as the most powerful species in the cosmos, right? And so imagine at first it was afraid of extraterrestrials. It's like, yo, bro, And anything that is not real to us, we cannot love. That's the truth of it. We easily get angry. And the question in my mind would be like, why? Why was it so easy to get this person that angry? Because I don't know if people know this. Anyone who's angry, who thinks anger is a victorious alpha archetype, you're going to become muscle. You're going to be abused. You're going to be used by smarter people, right? And the only way a person can, in some sense, protect themselves from deception is staying true to their truth to some degree. This doesn't mean forcing their truth, Sometimes I look at religious communities and I'm like, are these guys like forcing baby food and feel completely free in? They will not be their real self in. To be honest, like a reason why I'm so comfortable giving these talks is only because I'm alone. Birds like landed near me and I've been like distracted by them, Anyways. What I'm trying to get to is that we human beings are acknowledging a view of reality that time is just like a straight line. And souls are reincarnating, that's the Buddhist view. The secular view is no, there's no reincarnation. I mean, from the secular view, the periodic table is reincarnating as creatures and civilizations and as world content, So if you're a chemist, the periodic table is reincarnating. If you're a Buddhist, your consciousness is reincarnating. Now, this is the view I had, right? Recently, I've come to this view where I'm like, okay, it's one lifetime, which is another way of saying I get to acknowledge every day once and treat this life like it's like it's like a journey, right? So I'm on vacation on Earth as an embodied being. And so really, as this embodied being, I think that it's pretty much, what do you want to use your existence for if your experience is aware beyond objects and subjects? And to me, what I've realized is that there is a governing force in this world, okay? And it's kind of like a sibling dimension. It's like our world is a twin, okay? And there's a twin dimension, okay? And nobody sees the other twin. But when you notice the other twin, when you notice that the power that moves phenomena in the moment spontaneously arises out of nowhere at times. Okay, not everything is visual energy containment.
It arises, it appears. So what it is as if there's like we're in a 2D dimension, and three-dimensional beings at any moment can shift the 2D, right? So we are actually, whether we acknowledge it or not, in a potential presence of greater dimensions. Now the next thing is, how do we interact? Now this part's a bit bizarre. Some people think that, is it similar to how like a pet owner interacts with a pet? You know, like this higher dimensional human adopts this animal, right? This pet, right? And feeds the pet, gives the food to the pet. And if the pet misbehaves, the owner, like, you know, punishes the dog, right? So the same thing seems to be happening, right? But with a transcendental archetype, right? So it seems that in, I don't know, but it's weird. But it's like, if there were higher dimensional beings, it's like, are we their pets? Do you know what I'm saying? And then I realized the pet doesn't have self-awareness. We do, right? Like we have the neocortex, like our brain has something developed that other animals don't. And so I thought about it, and I'm like, yo, right? What if all these people, like the shamans, do you know, who contacted spirits in nature, or all those people in theosophical societies or esoteric societies, thinking that they have like, you know, like, you know, minions in other dimensions, you know, all of that is, it's all flawed. Really what it is this is Mr. Within's view. Anybody, even if you're somebody into esotericism, this is my view. This is what's happening. The other side of the veil of the human sensory perception is our future selves, and they are living there. And it's another way of saying, from this side of the coin, the past is living to the present. Other side of the coin, future is living to the present. Which is another way of saying, what is the higher dimension is the future of this dimension, which hasn't happened yet. But behind the veil it has. You see, think about it, right? When we look in nature, we see something designed like a seed. You put a seed in the soil, it becomes a tree. Something that small holds within it the intelligence through the right conditions to become something so big. Now let's for a second consider that the earth was a seed. This world, it's all sprouted from a seed. That would imply that everything was designed from the beginning. Everything was in the original state. And so it would imply that the consciousness of the seed is the consciousness of all the potential trees that can come from that seed. What I'm trying to say is that there was a time in human history where we were fascinated with objects. Then we became fascinated with subjects and psychology. Now, I would create a new term. I would coin a new term and call it presentology. Okay, where we are experiencing here to study the presence of an individual. A presence of an individual is not their words, it's not their actions, right? And believe it or not, it's not just limited to the beliefs that they're conscious of. Right? Like, we are still looking at people based on what we see in front of us, rather than realizing everybody is actually strategizing internally ahead of the moment, and then what we see in the moment is them living towards their own inner future. So when I say young souls learning from ancient worlds, or ancient worlds learning from young souls, the idea is that we are not here to have a world be gifted to our consciousness. We are a gift for the world. And this world knows. Every being, even if it's interdimensional, if there's other dimensions, lesser beings, higher beings, they all know that humanity is the lucky child. The human species is the glowing chosen, the glowing chosen. Our species has an incredible destiny, and the cosmos watches until we discover our birthright. And an advanced civilization is the future's birthright. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if the word death means like going, like, let me check this out. So, there we go. So it says the word death comes from Old English deep, and it meaning the. And what is the future? The actualization of the potential of the present. Our future beat us to it. You know, I always thought, why is it that in these like ancient spiritual circles they talk about spirit guides? How could a spirit know how to guide you? And I was like, the only explanation is that it's a future self. The angels are what I think are collective human beings. So imagine, give it a time span of 1,000 years, 600 years, 400 years, and give it a time span it's in. Individuals no longer want to be in the governance of their own mind. And so just like how there was an alpha wolf and the beta wolves followed, in the future there's going to be alpha minds, and there's going to be people who connect their minds to these alpha minds. Okay, eventually over a long period of time, these alpha minds are going to become like buildings of consciousness. They're going to become beacons of consciousness, right? They're going to become like grids. And so when that happens, they're going to be similar to the archangels on the other side of the veil, that in religious analogy. So what I'm trying to say, it's God is how in the future we are a collective being beyond space and time. That's what I'm saying. And I'm saying because that being is beyond space and time, it has access to us now. And we are privileged to have a transcendental dimension. Some civilizations don't have any sort of transcendental narrative active in their consciousness as a species, right? But we do. This is a blessing. This was like a gift our ancestors gave us before we forgot them. Do you know? And so this suggestion of a divine reality, this suggestion, even the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, this ancient book says this world is the shadow of the real world. Like, we're not in the main room. We're like in the lobby, right, of like, I don't know, this next level hotel, cosmic hotel, you know? You know, I think in the future, you know, I'll probably have friends who will invite me to, you know, Burj Khalifa, you know. Can you imagine, you know, one day I'm like, hey everybody, I'm live streaming from the sky. This is a skydiving episode. And the whole episode, you know, imagine the viewers are like, what did Mr. Within say in the skydiving episode? He said, hello everyone. Then, ah! 30 minutes of the most, you know, meditative, I'm falling. It's not that they have the they have the same accurate imagery, you know, for all the concepts that others do. Do you know? And so really what it is when a person communicates, it's like we're seeing a being perform. Really what we are doing here is we are a performing species. In one lecture, I called it a designer species, and this was inspired out of the Dragon Ball Z anime, where they were a warrior species, and I thought, all right, the human species is a designer species. But we're also more than that. We are a performing species. And what does that mean? That means our mortality inspires us to, it doesn't matter who's watching, but it's kind of like you're alive once, and you're like, okay, let's say nobody likes me. Let's say the world is against me. Let's say everything is, you never know. It takes the shyest person on the planet and, tells them to give 10,000 talks. That's the mystery of reality. We are intended for moments. Okay, I think this is back. I wondered, why is it that when you look at ants, they have an anthill? You look at bees, they have a beehive. You look at human beings, and they were freaking scattered, like members of the same species. There's still species civil wars, and people are like, yo, where are the aliens? Why aren't the aliens coming down? Because we can't even deal with ourselves. That's the issue, right? Who are alive, it is important that you begin learning to trust your consciousness, trust your energy, trust what you're being before you do anything. And once you trust these states, you will be rooted as a very present observer, to a degree that even if anything physically happens, something that knows it's non-physical stands to watch. So what I'm trying to tell the viewers is, there's a level of spirituality, this is at the beginning, where you get enticed by the imagery and the narratives and the teamwork with the celestial narrative. But after some point, these Jungian synchronicities are trying to make you press pause on the video game of life or the story you're telling yourself, because the ability of those who have seen beyond their objective subjective dimensions is a pivotal ability. It's an ability to pivot. So what that means is, there's some beings, very exceptional beings, they could be raised in a certain way, conditioned in a certain way, and in a certain intense situation, bypass their conditioning by the true nature of their presence. That means how their energy is holding itself in the moment has a sort of way that could be completely different from how their ideology and their mind is keeping them present. You see, the human being is still playing dress up, right, on an objective level and a subjective level. And this dress up with subjectivity is going to make the species be like, wait a minute, I can choose to be happy and sad. I can choose to identify with this archetype, that archetype. So what is this? Are we these attributeless points of attention that are how attention and energy are existing as one moment, that are just looking at an all-you-can-eat, buffet or a selection option of archetypes and being like, okay, today I'm going to be this person. Or whenever something benefits you, a greedy archetype comes in and you feel like you're ahead, but you've actually defeated something, right? So this is the issue, right? Because we are living with each other right now. If you took right now there's 8 billion human beings on the planet, right? So if you took all of these 8 billion human beings and they lived for 1 year in a space capsule alone in space, they would come back to Earth loving their humanity. You see, we are taking for granted the greatness that we and our ancestors have built up to. And dear viewers, this is what Mr. Within will leave you with for this episode. Whatever you are, everything is waiting for your great performance. Your own soul is waiting, watching. That means it's like our own, imagine everybody has the most advanced version of themselves watching them, waiting to see, okay, when would this, student smarten up to learn from itself, because what it is belongs to the nature of reality. You see, beauty is ever present. And so when we live beautiful lives, we are living as a beautiful species. And do you know what that means? This doesn't mean the beauty of you cover your face with chemicals and enough
conjuring. Do you know there comes a point where you realize like there's a certain time span for the completion of a sort of mission of your species, right? Living like universal beings. All the enlightened freaking gurus are all, if you ask them, who are you? The enlightened gurus, like, buddy, I'm the cosmos. The present. Dear consciousness activating on the surface of planet Earth. You must live for your species, regardless of any ideology. You must not forget your humanism. It doesn't matter how much in other dimensions, you know, God's presence finds you or you find God's presence within you, regardless. The advanced civilization is the common denominator of all ideological systems in the outer realms. Whoever you are, I don't care if you're good or evil, if you're a person of power, talk about the advanced civilization. Talk about where we are going rather than where we are or where we were. You see, all of the isms will stop, right? If the past is forgotten. That means if imagine an extraterrestrial, in one of my sci-fi novels, stories, I have this extraterrestrial from the Andromeda galaxy. In my science fiction, the Andromedans are incredibly enlightened beings. They're pretty much the most enlightened, like, extraterrestrial beings in the sci-fi universes I create in my books. So where was I going with this? Oh yeah, this Andromedan being lands on Earth and is so peaceful and is so free that it has no preference. It doesn't want to control human beings, has no opinion. It's kind of there like a greater dimension watching. And then the human beings ask this extraterrestrial to bring world peace and advance their civilization. And this extraterrestrial just snaps its fingers, raises its fingers to the sky, and so the only thing left is the future. Our species is trying to be entranced and it's trying to be deluded, and I do understand the urge of people in the New Age community, nature lovers, non-dualists, right? I understand you want to just be present and let the divine move everything, but you will realize that the divine needs to move you until you realize you are also part of it. You see, this is a rare dimension. The earth plane is a workstation. And this workstation is here for us to experience acts of choice. Because, I have wondered what is sometimes I look into the philosophy of different topics, and I was thinking about the concept of romance, and I was thinking of the concept of what is attractive, And then I kind of wondered about different stories, stories of legendary lovers I heard, and I realized what was very attractive or alluring was someone who trusted their world. Someone who wasn't dependent on the outer realms to be themselves. That's a very advanced being. Do you see? This doesn't mean the person's ignorant. This doesn't mean the person's oblivious only in their inner realms, right? Like the person in their inner realms thinks they're like a Game of Thrones character and they run out in the street with a sword. Like, no, I don't mean like that. I don't mean being trapped in your inner realms. I'm saying that you, first of all, have a capacity to discriminate between what is an inner subjective event of your mind and what is an outer objective event. And something that they should probably talk about more in psychology, which I think they don't, and they should, is really this idea that a person has to first see if they can help themselves. Imagine there were like therapy sessions, right, where the first therapy session was free, right?
I've never been to these. Like, okay, I've seen in this TV show I've seen. So what it is so imagine the first session, the person just tries to see the psychologist tries to see if the person can fix their own psychology. You know, it's honestly reliance and power. You know, especially as a man. You know, okay, to continue. I mean, what can I say? You know, the coolest way is to understand how something works. And so how the human intelligence works is that your eyes open, you access three-dimensional landscape and information, you notice what's moving out of that three-dimensional space, and the movement is registered differently than just the space. And so the brain has an ability to take the geometry, the basic alphabet of shapehood, from its basic sensory perception, and to actually build models and to build structures in the inner realm. And one of the thing I think it's part of my purpose on this planet is to activate the next great designers of the future generations. You know, the advanced walk is beginning. The walk of advancement, or the walk towards the greatest advancement. O beings in the universal sector, hear the songs of the advanced civilizations. They are like your great forces in the realm, you know. And there isn't just Earth, there's other advanced civilizations. There's even civilizations on Earth previously who have ascended. What does that mean? That means they reached a point where they managed to meet the quota of physical expression for their time, and so they could move beyond the dimension. It was a permission of a species to travel from one dimension to another because it had done everything it was required. Like, you know, there's some things are required beyond our conscious understanding sometimes. So many people say they love it, but they don't love it, and they would realize that they are, I shouldn't say true love, but that is pure love, right? When you love not the known dimensions of something, but you love the unknown dimensions, you know? Like, I've seen people care for my known self, but very few people, just like my close family maybe, and a few friends, have cared for my unknown self, right? And usually I know, because those people who acknowledge my unknown self, I don't know why, but it's like, I just have this feeling like those people are blessed that they can see. Do you see? Sometimes the blessing is there. We just have to notice it. You know, imagine God gave you 10,000 blessings and you just had to open them. You know, imagine there's, you know, endless gifts in this cosmos. And, you know, imagine whoever you are hearing this talk now, imagine the universe graces you. That in everywhere you will appear as a being, you will be given the greatest of gifts. You see, the advanced humanity is simultaneously the gifted humanity. What it means is that love is the task of an intelligent being. You know, cruelty, like the less smarter you are, Isaac Asimov says this, violence is the last refuge of the incompetent, which means that if the more incompetent you are, the more you choose violence first, right? So the more smarter you are, the more you realize, like, you in some sense can solve the situation non-violently, right? And so people say nowadays there's a crisis of manhood, but I would say that it's not a crisis of manhood, it's a decision our ancestors made to create subjective laws that allowed us to live more as minds and emotional beings than as just physically amped beings. Do you see what I'm saying? Imagine, like, give it 200 years. Imagine 200 years from now, you know, every person has a robot android bodyguard that's like $5. You pay $5 and you have like a giant robot bodyguard, right? And imagine in the future, like, every people can be unhealthy, physically unfit, right? And there'd be no physical issue. There'd be a giant robot to protect them, you know? You know, sometimes we wait for truth. And then truth's like, yo, what are you waiting for? You know, imagine there was this religious person and this very pious religious person, and this religious person one day philosophically freaks out, and he goes to pray, and he's like, God, I have no idea what I am. I have no idea why I'm here. Like, what is this? Doesn't make sense. You know, make this make sense. Divine. It's like, buddy, I've already given you everything you need. That's what creating you meant. You know, when people were like, how were, you know, like, let me tell you this, religious people, some people wonder how religion expanded in the world, like, and it was so great. And let me tell you why. Because there was this ancient idea that if you doubted yourself, you were doubting God's creation. And so imagine being a religious person in a battlefield and a non-religious person. The religious person feels as if God's on their side, and in some sense, if they doubt their own ability, it's going against, like, God's will, right? But the issue is that God, like, this is the biggest thing about religion, because my whole feeling is, like, when I talk about religion, is that, is there going to be a Hunger Games in the future? Like 3,000 years from now, are there going to be religious robots praying? Like, I talk about this in my science fiction. And you know what it is? This is what I have come to as a sort of, you know, recent insight. I just realized it's like I've come here to meet my soul. Right? Imagine a person they say is a soul, sure. But imagine by being something doesn't necessarily mean you can see something. Like right now, I'm sitting in a car. I don't see my face. I'm being my face, but I can't see my face, right? So it's a very interesting opportunity to see Earth, if this was in a sort of interdimensional context, to see Earth as a place where you can actually see your soul, right? You can get to see it, see its structure to it, okay? And so what I have learned, and this is, I'm not a perfect person, but you know, if somebody says Mr. Within, like I think I could be one of the very few people on this planet that can that is kind of meant to explain the inner realms to the species. You see, it's the advantage and the ability of mind. The games of the species are in the outer realms. In the future, like in the far future, you might be walking in a park and suddenly seeing like 20 people sitting in meditation, right? And realize those people have been sitting there for a month not moving. Why? Because they're living there in their inner realms. They're living inner lives, you know? This body is beautiful. It has incredible tool. You know, we've and somebody's like, Mr. Within, do you have an experience with the logos? And I'll be like, yeah. It went something like, oh, wait, how many talks do you want me to get? Just like birth game. Story which is malleable and I can use my free will to change. Or I could choose to see myself as a part of history. And you know what's funny? It's the stories the future generations will hear will suggest their availability of perception to conception. Where the being is aware is getting bored of just being a subject, which means we're reaching a time where the species, in order to feel truly alive, wants to feel itself as a organizational. We have to reorganize civilization in a way where there could be roles and a ranking system, right? So imagine, this is a very complex act. I'm pretty much using something that was inspired out of video games use this, right? They have a ranking system. Man, it's quiet today. And it's 12:21. The time. All right, guys, I'm trying to think what else I can say. If there's questions, feel free to ask. This might be a bit difficult considering there's 0 viewers right now, but we're all, it's strange. We're born, we get to see a world for some time, and then we exit the world. And I was like, what is this? Is this just tourism? Are we just supposed to see the world, or are we here to do something? And then I realized the more responsibility you have as a being, the greater your position in the realm is. There was somebody named Rupert Sheldrake who was a colleague, was a friend of Terence McKenna, and he spoke about morphic fields and how species are like kind of like are like memories of the planet. and these morphic fields are like behaviors of the mind of the planet or something in those lines. And so something that Rupert Sheldrake was saying about morphic fields, I think he didn't realize, or maybe he did, that its deeper implication is that people's egos are actually the mind of the planet's behavior. So for example, if there's an evil person in history or there's a good person in history, were they evil or good by choice, or was that the morphic field, or was that something the planet, and that had to happen in that phase of, let's say, existential growth of just how the moment was existing. Anyways, guys, maybe I should end this off. Thanks for listening. Young souls learning from ancient worlds learning from young souls, young worlds learning from ancient souls, whatever. The idea is simply this, that you're present in a reality, right? And just like a video game, there's a quest and there's a map. And so knowledge is you getting a sense of the map, how reality has moved before you were born in this world. And then in some sense there requires, like, do you know what I'm saying? It's like there needs to be strategy, which is the vision, and then knowledge is part of the tactics. Okay? The best thing I can say to the viewers is that open your eyes, and even if your eyes are open, wonder if they're truly open, and wonder if your eyes can even close. You know, like there's some yogis and mystics that they lived lives where they were actually a temporary cause experiencing its temporary, they were an eternal cause experiencing their temporary effect. Like, we don't know if the experience of temporality is being experienced is for an eternal being or not, right? This world is doing something weird. Everything is changing except change. Because if change changed, then it would stop, I'm saying. Anyways, ultimately, my wisdom has come to this, that we're in this life to also learn from our moment of being. And for me today, I thought, like, yo, what if what if I'm here to interact? Like, for the first time, the concept of isolation and loneliness felt like the context of it changed for me. Do you know? It's as if some people don't like to be alone, and then some people are like, wait a minute, I have this mind, I have this non-physical interface of intelligence going on in my moment of being. Let me understand, let me train myself through the wisdom of my own presence, which is beyond ideology. Because let me tell you, if everything is love, love everything, love, you know, and then people would be like, what a lovely guy, and they'd come and attach, their personalities. But the issue is, my whole point is, I'm like, love, we're in all of us is our extinction as a species. Right? There's a bigger game than the individual, which is what's going on with everything. Do you know? What's going on with the species? If you're a young person hearing this talk, I want you to, what's his name? Recently we've acquired language compared to the 4.5 billion year old age of the earth. Right? So language is a recent acquisition, writing is a recent acquisition, and we're living at that time where by the age 2050, soon the species could move to domains of telepathy. Let's say with like Neuralink and Twitter and all of this. We're living at that time where if you're alive, the urge seems to be that of communicating the inner realms to the outer realms. This is an honorable act, and it's an act which is everybody's doing in so many levels. Like inventors, they see something in their inner realms, they create it. Like boxers, they see another like greater box. What's missing from the world is that within has put in the missing puzzle is the greatest gift to to the realm, to all realms, you know. Thanks for listening, guys. Hope this episode was helpful. Share, subscribe, comment, like, and I guess how have you learned from your moment of being? Like, answer that question below. Thanks for